downgraded from walking funny to walking with a cane to walking with a walker. And in 2021, I became a paraplegic. Just like PTSD all over again, I started to go through depression, thought life was over. I started to cry at night and say, why was this happening to me? When I lost the use of my legs, I just said, why even be here? I found myself a burden to my family, my friends, my loved ones. I convinced myself it'd be better if I wasn't here so I wouldn't be a burden. Then I thought about what Finn had said to me, and he said, you're a good person. So I said, okay, I got to get out of this. I planted the seed of suicide. It's on roots, and it grew, and it took over my whole brain housing group. I was on 5150 hold, and that is Suicide Prevention Watch. And while I was in there, I didn't think I needed to be in there, but when I got out, I realized I needed to uproot that plant, get it out of my system. So I spent a lot of waking nights looking at videos and reading and talking, figuring out what do I need to do to get out of here. And I was looking for assistance to help me get that suicide thought out of my head. And then I came up with a term, and I came up with a code, and then I thought about the Marine Corps' motto, Improvise, Adapt, Overcome. My mission was the mission of living and the mission of life. And then I needed to improvise, adapt, overcome to accomplish that mission.
Hello, welcome to the show. This is Scalable Thinking. I am host Edgar Sierra, and today we have John Patricio, owner of Patricio Systems, but also the author of the book Improvise Adapt Overcome. John, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
It's great having you here, John. We're going to talk about your book during the podcast, but I would like to start by understanding what your company does. Can you tell us what Patricio System does?
Yeah, sure. I have experience in information technology. I used to be a senior software engineer as well as a senior project manager. So with that, naturally, we do project management, IT consulting, as well as staff augmentation. We have a large network of IT staff members that could come in, work on a project, and be pulled in and be pulled out just as fast when the project's over. When a company is implementing a new IT project, as we know, IT changes on a dime. So sometimes your employees may or may not have the technology experience needed to implement the new IT project. We have quite a large network of IT professionals that are up to speed in training, and I call it just-in-time IT resourcing. We do that for IT staffing. We also do that for project management. So we have project managers with a plethora of experiences, and that's what we do. I leverage my service-disabled, veteran-owned small business certification to help us land state, local, and federal contracts.
John, what is your ideal client profile?
Client profile is basically government purchasers, government implementers, local government, state, federal. We assist and help them get their disabled veteran and small business certification requirements, as well as helping them with their staff augmentation needs. Like I said, sometimes it's hard to find resources, it's hard to find staff, or it's hard to train staff because you have staff, but the technology that they have or the knowledge that they have was last year or even last week's knowledge. There's so much information that keeps on coming, and with the use of AI and the use of training and webinars, sometimes it's just not that proficient to try to train someone. It's better to grab somebody with the knowledge that's needed for implementing a project. And then once the project's over, we can provide SMEs to help with the implementation toward going into operations. And then we'll pull the project staff and pull them on another project. That's what we're looking for. Our E1 is the government purchasers.
John, what are the main issues at Systems right now as a company?
The main issues right now with the company is penetrating the federal market. When I first started the company, we started off in state and local. My first contract was with the DMV, California DMV. It was a small project, and it was a great win. And we've cracked the California code. We have contracts with the County of San Diego, contracts with CalPERS. We've had a contract with Cal OES, and then we're doing some for CalSAWS. It's all California-based or local. We also have a contract with the state of Washington implementing an EMR, but we haven't cracked the federal code yet. That's our big thing is we currently have the federal certification, service disabled veteran-owned small business. We recently got our 8A and we had our GSA schedule. Problem is we just haven't figured out what's the way to get in on the federal code. We're here in the West Coast in California, and a lot of federals over there on the East Coast during the Beltway, but we are trying to play in our black backyard, and we're starting to make a move toward the Navy and the Marine Corps, San Diego, which is a little bit closer to home. I was just there a couple of weeks ago at the Navy Gold Coast and made a good impact with a lot of contacts. So our biggest issue right now is trying to figure out how do we go and get on the federal contracting vehicles. Again, we have a GSA. It's expiring next month. It's 5 years. We have not had a contract on the GSA. So we don't want to let that expire, but it's just really tough for us to figure that out.
And what would you say are the main challenges of Patricio Systems?
Yeah, the main challenge is the penetration of the market in the federal world. We've made a lot of good, close contacts. We landed a federal contract vehicle. We actually haven't had any successful contracts yet. And with that, the federal contracting is not a joke. With the FARs and making sure that we're in regulation. So there's this terminology called FARs, which is, I would say, to put it in layman's term, it's basically guidelines on how we're supposed to do contracting. And if you're not familiar with the FARs, you could be easily out of compliance, and then you won't be able to win the contract. So the biggest thing is just we're feeding from the fire hose, and we don't have enough mouths to drink.
Talking about that, how do you see Patricio Systems in 2026? What is the vision for Patricio Systems?
Good question. Thank you. The big question from Patricio Systems is we're changing our strategic direction. Currently, what we do right now is we do staff augmentation services, and that's to assist with projects, to a temporary endeavor to help people to ramp up, bring people in, let them go. But I just found that there's quite a few companies that do that. Project management, staff augmentation. So we're trying to figure out what is our next chapter. So we're leaning toward looking at AI solutions and AI implementations. So we're having some strategic management meetings to figure out what is our new strategic directions. Good thing to do is if you have a good company, that's great. But what you need to do is you need to improvise, adapt, overcome, and pivot to the need at hand. It's a Marine Corps term, and the Marines have a mission. And when Marines have a roadblock in the way, you don't just turn around and go home. You improvise, you adapt, you overcome, get through that mission. You think, how do I get around this roadblock? In it, around it, under it, or even straight through it. But you do it in a structured manner. And that's the same thing what we're doing with Patricio Systems. We're using that Marine Corps doctrine we're improvising, we're adapting, we're overcoming to the market that's needed. But we see AI is the big thing. So we're trying to make a move into that world.
And it's interesting what you are saying, because so you have clearly thought about where Patricia's system is going and the inspiration behind it. And I know you have also shared this inspiration in your book, Improvise Adapt Overcome. Tell us about the story behind your book, John.
Yeah, sure. So I'm writing a memoir of my life. It's called Improvise Adapt Overcome. And it's not just about Patricio Systems, but it's about me. I served in the Marine Corps. I was a U.S. Marine. I served in Desert Storm from the beginning of my life all the way to now. I had to deal with adversity. I was going to be a lifer Marine. And what I learned is you need to be flexible. You need to flow like water. One example is, let's say if you're rolling in jiu-jitsu and you've got this big person on your left-hand side and you want to move him to your right. Imagine he's the size of a house and you want to move him to your right. You don't pick up the house and move the house over to your right. You spin your body and now the house is on your right side. So you're improvising, you're adapting to the situation, you're overcoming to accomplish the mission. You don't get stuck on what it is you need to do. You're stuck in how you're going to do it. You figure out how you're going to do it. So this book talks about me dealing with the PTSD that I had when I after coming out of Desert Storm. I served in the ground offensive in liberation of Kuwait in 1991. It also deals with my service-connected disability. I've had quite a few challenges. I was going to be a lifer Marine, but life had another plan for me. There were some medical issues that I dealt with. The Marine Corps medically retired me. I had to deal with surgeries from that, and I had to deal with the complications from those surgeries.
And John, how do you use the inspiration from that book in Patricia Systems? You also have an organization. Tell us more about that organization and how it's aligned to the inspiration of your book.
Yeah, sure. Perfect. Thank you for asking. So the book is titled Improvise Adapt Overcome. And I said the best way to get the book out there is I want to make the world a better place. I know that we do have suicide rate of veterans at about 22 per day. And I'm hoping that this will reach to those veterans, because I want to let you know while I was going through my challenges, I was this close to being one of those veteran suicide statistics. Well, I decided to reach out to the VA and I'm better. So I created a foundation, and it was just a couple of weeks ago, it was just approved as an official C3 charitable foundation, and it's called Improvise Adapt Overcome Foundation. The website is iaof.org. And from there, you'll be able to see what we're doing. So our main focus is we want to give civilians and veterans with mobility issues, and we want to point them in the direction to take them to the right resources and the right tools so they can get help. In addition to that, we also want to show them examples of people overcoming adversity. So the first example is me. And what I can do, if you want, is I could quickly go over maybe a 2-minute speech on my story. And then we could hear about my story from the beginning to the end. So I'll do that. So what I did is I served in the Marine Corps, and I told you I was in Desert Storm. Well, I'm Filipino, and by inheritance, I'm a Roman Catholic, because that's how Filipinos are. And I believed in God, but I wasn't really a big person that went to church. But I did keep God inside my heart and inside my mind. And I know that God says we all have to be good people and good to your neighbor. So when I was in Desert Storm, we did some things that I wasn't really too proud of. And I've seen things, I've heard voices of grown men screaming, and I felt really bad for what I did. And I was not too proud of what I was doing, what I did. And I felt like I was a bad person. Feeling like a bad person, you start to fulfill the prophecy, start acting like a bad person. I was thinking I wasn't someone to be proud of because what I did. And when I talked with people, they would say, "Oh, you're following orders." That didn't help me. Yeah, it was your job. You needed to do that. That didn't help me. And then I was talking with a young gentleman. His name is Marvin Finden. He's no longer with us. He was an airborne ranger. And I was telling him that I wasn't feeling like a good person because of what I did. I don't, really go into full details of what happened, but just wasn't feeling good. And he said something that was profound that changed my life. And he said, "John, stop. Just stop." The next thing he said changed my life. And he said, "Just think about this. Because you feel bad for what you did when you were over there, that means you're good. There are people that are bad that would be proud of it. They'd talk about it. They'd flaunt it. You're ashamed of what you did. That means you're a good person." I actually listened to him, stopped. I cried. I gave him a big hug and I said, "Brother, thank you." I felt like my 8-year-old self and my 108-year-old self were proud of me again. And I realized I was a good person, and that touched me. So what I want to do is I want to do exact same thing Marvin Finden did to me, is help people out who think that their life is in a bad place and they could get better, because you can get better. And it isn't anybody's that helps you. You got to do it yourself with a little bit of assistance. So that was what I did, and I got better. So my PTSD was helped, and I deal with it every once in a while, but because of what Marvin said to me, I'm here talking with you. In my second enlistment, that's when I got a fungal infection in my lungs. I was going to be a lifer Marine, and I loved it. I grew up in the Marine Corps. I started in the Marine Corps as a young baby, and I got out of boot camp as a man, and I was in charge of the lives of 12 men, and I loved it. The Marine Corps gave me exactly what I needed. But then I got a fungal infection, and that fungal infection went into my brain, and I had fungal meningitis. I took antifungal meds by the prescription from the doctor, and I got better. I went back in the training, and I was ready to continue with the mission. But then the Marine Corps came back and said, "Fungal meningitis is chronic. You will have it for the rest of your life. You'll relapse. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you relapse, and if you're in a combat zone, you're going to put yourselves and the Marines around you in danger. So we're processing you for medical retirement." Broke my heart. What am I going to do? So the Marine Corps medically retired me. I interviewed and I looked for a job, and that's when I met Marvin Finden. The Marine Corps was right. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I relapsed. Before the relapse, when I had the first bout of meningitis, I got antifungals and I got better. I was considered a quote unquote disabled veteran because of my chronic disability, but I was 100% healthy. When I got out of the Corps, I was still healthy, but I was a disabled vet. But the Marine Corps was right. It was right to render me a disabled veteran, because I relapsed in 1995. My fungal infection spiked up again, and they gave me a medication called intrathecal amphotericin B via lumbar puncture, but my levels were still high. It didn't work. And a lumbar puncture is a needle in the small of my back. The doctor says, "We have to put the medication closer to your head, so we're going to drill a hole in your head, and it's kind of like a funnel when you're putting oil in a car, and we're going to inject the medication through that funnel." Well, That funnel was called an Ommaya reservoir. It failed. Then I had to have a second surgery. The second one failed. I had a third surgery. They moved it up on top. That one failed. They had to have a fourth surgery. And then while having that intrathecal amphotericin be injected in my head, I developed swelling in the brain. So I had hydrocephalus. So the neurosurgeon put in a VP shunt. That was a fifth surgery. That shunt failed and they had to replace it. But all that was said and done, I had 6 brain surgeries in 2 months. Almost didn't make it, but I survived. Lived somewhat a normal life, except with the headaches and the surgery in my head. And then in 1998, I relapsed again, and I had to have a surgery in my spinal cord. They put a spinal shunt in my T4 section of my spine, and then I got better. And I go through physical therapy to learn to walk. I walked. I was good. And I lived a normal, healthy life for 20 years. I was, again, a quote disabled vet with the surgeries, with the PTSD, but I was healthy. I ran. I worked out. I studied in martial arts. I did Krav Maga. I did jiu-jitsu, and I made it up Half Dome. And life was good. I had a new job, started my company. But 20 years later, in 2018, my body started to present itself with spaghetti legs. I called it spaghetti legs, and it was an issue of me walking. I wanted to walk my legs straight, but my legs were moving like spaghetti. So we went to a neurosurgeon, and then he said, John, that shunt that was put in your back 20 years ago was clogged by scar tissue. We removed it, but you should get better. We don't want to remove the shunt, but we removed the scar tissue. Removing the shunt is a dangerous surgery. We don't want to do that. Well, I didn't get better. Eventually, he said, we're going to need to remove that shunt. My wife, my high school sweetheart wife, we met in high school. She's a neurosurgical nurse, and she said, John, I don't want you to remove the shunt. It's very dangerous surgery. Another thing is there's no guarantee it's going to fix you. There's a possibility you could die. So I asked the neurosurgeon, what happens if I don't do the surgery? And he said, yeah, you won't be at risk of loss of life, but you're going to lose the function of your legs. So I had to think about it long and hard. And we said, I'd rather be here than not here. So I elected not to have the surgery. So from 2018 to October 2021, I downgraded from walking funny to walking with a cane to walking with a walker. And in 2021, I became a paraplegic. Just like PTSD all over again, I started to go through depression. I thought life was over. Life as I knew it was over. While I was downgrading my walking, there was a lot of falls, a lot of ER visits. The paramedics all knew me by first name. The firemen knew me because they were the ones that took me to the hospital. I started to cry at night and say, why was this happening to me? When I lost the use of my legs, I just said, why even be here? I found myself a burden to my family, my friends, my loved ones. And I convinced myself it'd be better if I wasn't here so I wouldn't be a burden. But then I thought about what Finn had said to me. And he said, you're a good person. So I said, okay, I got to get out of this. I planted the seed of suicide and it grew. It's on roots and it grew and it took over my whole brain housing group. I was on 5150 Hold. And that is Suicide Prevention Watch. And while I was in there, I didn't think I needed to be in there. But when I got out, I realized I needed to uproot that plant, get it out of my system. So I spent a lot of waking nights looking at videos and reading and talking, figuring out what do I need to do to get out of here. And I was looking for assistance to help me get that suicide thought out of my head. And then I came up with a term and I came up with a code. And then I thought about the Marine Corps' motto, Improvise, Adapt, Overcome. My mission was the mission of living and the mission of life. And then I needed to improvise, adapt, overcome to accomplish that mission. So I came up with this motto, and it's the very first thing said in my book. And it goes like this. You are not a result of what happens to you. You are a result of how you respond to what happens to you. Since you can control your response, you can control your result. A thing that is, my thing is, if you think rainy day, the chance of rain's 100%. And I said, I'm going to control my response and I am going to control my result. So after I did that, I started to reach out to the VA. I didn't reach out to the VA as a disabled vet when I was healthy because I didn't think I needed it. But now that I'm a paraplegic, I said, let me reach out to the VA and ask for help. I was assigned to the spinal cord injury clinic at the VA, and I saw how good they took care of their veterans with spinal cord injuries. State-of-the-art tools. And I saw a lot of the veterans there who were amputees, quadriplegics, paraplegics, blind, but they were happy. The VA does so many things right. And unfortunately, the only thing that makes news about the VA is the bad stuff. The thing that's parallel to that is the lights go out in your home for 5 minutes. 3 days later, it goes out another for 10 minutes. You're more irritated. 3 weeks later, it goes out for half an hour. What do you think in your head? My God, the lights are always off. You do the math, the lights are always on. 24/7 every day is on. You just remember the bad. Us as humans, when we were surviving, we remember the bad, take for granted the good. Same thing with the VA. The VA? Oh my God, good luck. That's what I thought until I went there and saw it firsthand. They saved my life. I ran into a physical therapist who taught me physical therapists tools. I ran into an occupational therapist. We know what those are. Then I ran into a recreational therapist. Recreational therapists showed me how to go outside, be with other veterans, do things outside in the sun. I went to the winter sports clinic and I skied down Snowmass near Aspen in a modified chair, and I fell in love with my body again. Before that, I was cursing my body, cursing my legs, cursing my back, cursing my head. Hateful. Then, when I skied, I said, I'm capable of doing this. Me and my snow instructors, we went on the slope and we cried up there when I started to love myself again. I have a video on my webpage, and I'm happy for you guys to see that. But then while I was at the winter sports clinic, I ran into a 23-year-old female Marine. Her name was Brittany, and she was walking in an exoskeleton. And I said to myself, what the heck is that? How do I get in one of those? She told me what I needed to do, and that got me in my story. That was a little bit over a year ago, actually way over a year ago. And I'm currently going to graduate the program in December. I'm expected to graduate the program in December of this year, December 2025. When that happened and I started to love myself, I go, I need to put my story in a book so people could see my story, be inspired, so they could improvise, adapt, and overcome. What I want to do is I want to pay it forward, and I want to raise the attention. Instead of having one person see me like I saw Brittany, I want a lot of people to see me. So I'm going to raise awareness. I started my nonprofit. I started my book, and I'm going to do a famous walk. I'm going to graduate the program. I'm going to take the exoskeleton and train and train and train until I can walk 2 miles nonstop. Once I'm able to do that, I'm going to take it to the bridge of Golden Gate, and I'm going to ask people to join me like Forrest Gump when he was running. Donate to my foundation, join me on the walk, and I'm going to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge. So somebody on TV who's down and out, who's thinking about taking their life because of their body failing on them, they could see me and say, what the hell is that? How do I get in one of those? And if I could change one person's life, then I would have paid it forward. But my goal is I don't want to change one person's life. I want to make the world a better place.
John, such an inspiring story. John, how can people know more? We're going to put the links that you're going to give us in the description of the podcast, so people can just click and go to that site. Or how can people find and know more about your book, your foundation organization?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. We established a website, and the website is IAOF.org, which stands for Improvise Adapt Overcome Foundation. The website there clicks from there at the bottom. You can see our YouTube channel, which shows the videos of me walking. It also shows it's kind of long. So it's an 18-minute video of me being raw, talking about what I just told you, but it goes in more detail and I get very emotional. We try to cut it, but I have a long story. So I don't know if people will see it, but raising awareness, and if people could see that and get inspired from that and tell others, I'm hoping that grows like wildfire. In addition to that, from the webpage, you'll have a link that says book, and then you can go to the book, and then that's where you'll purchase. The book was written by me, and we didn't use large company. It was self-written. Eventually, once I get larger, I'm hoping to take it to a publisher and have it published in official. But there may be some inconsistencies. The picture quality may not be good, but the story and the meat is there, and that's what I want to do. I want people to read the book and get better. But if you see that, just understand it wasn't by a publishing company. It was by simple John Patricio, and I'm not a writer. So I did my best, and I had friends help me. But I looked at the book, and it's pretty good. So we're going to have a couple books available. We're going to have an ebook available, paperback, and we're also going to have a hardback. In addition to that, I have a good friend of mine. If you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see a good friend of mine. His name is John Rolls, and he did a couple of my audio stories. So I have audio stories of me meeting a homeless Marine, and I talk about that and the emotional part of that. And it's all there, all up in the first place you go is IAOF.org. You will see our webpage, our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our TikTok page, as well as our Instagram page. It's all there. And the first place you start is the web page, iaofs.org.
Okay. Besides getting your book through the web page, is it going to be in Amazon or any other big bookstore?
So instead of having it all over the place, what I did is it is currently available on Amazon. When you go to the web page and you click on the button, it's going to route you to Amazon. You'll have an option to pick any type of format. We're looking at other options too, other things. And when eventually we get it to be published, we'll think about that. But right now we're starting really small. We're hoping to just gain the traction here. My goal is for the foundation is we want to show people examples of adversity, my example first, and then get other people on there. And then point them to other companies like Challenged Athletes Foundation, the Paralyzed Veterans of America. Those are the organizations that also contributed to saving my life. So I want to pay it forward and help them out. Point them to them.
John, thank you very much. We're running out of time, but we will definitely love to have another podcast talking about your foundation and what your plans are in the foundation.
Edgar, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for talking with me.
For sure.